Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. You know, cryptocurrency has been in the news a ton. Bitcoin, which was launched in 2010. Some people think it's a response to the financial meltdown from 2008. Some people think it's fiction. I don't know. And then these new digital assets that are sort of governed by blockchain technology has both its people that are really for it and detractors against it. And so I wanted to delve into this a little bit more and understand it better. And we're joined tonight by Clare Brownell. I apologize, Brownell. She's a reporter with The Logic. Before that, she was with Maclean's magazine. She's an associate editor with Maclean still. She's a reporter, feature writer with the Financial Post. And at The Logic, I understand, Clare, that you investigate and write about digital currencies as well as clean tech.
That's right.
Sparked your interest in this?
I was covering cryptocurrencies when I worked at the Financial Post as well. So that was back in sort of 2016 to 2018. 2017 was a really wild year for cryptocurrencies, huge price run-up, starting to see some interest from institutional investors. The ICOs were also a big thing that was happening in 2017. Everybody launching a new coin and trying to get people to invest in it. People putting in hundreds of millions of dollars into things like cryptocurrency for dentists, things like that. So just all kinds of wild stuff going on that I had lots of fun covering.
So what is a cryptocurrency?
Okay, here's the way that I like to explain what cryptocurrency what it's for, because I think this is, and what the central technological innovation of it is. So let's say I wanted to create a new cryptocurrency. It's called Clare coins. And I decide that this cryptocurrency is pictures of monopoly money. So I take a picture of a monopoly dollar. I send it to you, Brian. I say, this is my new digital currency. I've sent you one Clare dollar. And it's just, it's a picture of a monopoly dollar. So what's the problem with that? Obviously, the problem with that is that you can just right click it, save it as some new file. You can copy it 10 times, 100 times. You can send that, on to as many people as you want to. And there's no way to check that, that it's a copy, that it isn't the original. So what Bitcoin made possible for the first time is to make a digital asset scarce and to be able to check that, that Clare coin that I sent to you, that I first of all had that Clare coin in my wallet, that I'm, sending it only to you. I'm not sending it to you and also to buy a pizza. And that there's a network, a decentralized network. This is the other innovation, that there's no government, there's no bank, there's no company, there's no third party checking all of these things. It's just open source software, a network of people around the world, that they came up with a technological solution to check and verify that, I sent you that one Clare coin.
So that one Clare coin, number one, can be identified as the original authentic Clare coin. And no government has it in the bank to say it. It's a whole bunch of computers around the world that somehow network and communicate to say that this is the original authentic Clare coin. Is that correct?
That's right. So so you have, first of all, innovation one. That's more or less right. So innovation one is that you're able to prove that you sent a scarce digital good that one person owned and is giving it to another person. Innovation two, that it's decentralized without the control of any government, any central bank, that it's just running fully on software. Nobody can stop it. Nobody can interfere with it. And then that's the third innovation, is that it's censorship resistant, is what Bitcoiners like to call it, is that, once I've sent it to you, a Bitcoin, a Clare coin, assuming that my cryptocurrency that I just invented had those same properties. It's unlike the government can't step in and say, hey, PayPal, hey, nice MasterCard, hey, Visa, I think Claire's a bad actor and I don't think she should be, sending money out. I want you to stop all the payments from her. They can't stop it. There's no way to stop the transfer of assets. So those are the main things that are new about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency that couldn't be done before.
Is the world better off because of this?
That is such an interesting question. And I think the jury is still out on that. And I think you can make a strong argument on both sides. So on the one hand, it enables, people living in repressive authoritarian regimes to, if, the country wanted to stop an activist group from raising money, Bitcoin might make it possible for them to get around those repressive controls. If there's, refugees, fleeing, against some sort of repressive regime, it would make it possible for them to, convert their assets to something like Bitcoin, take it with them while they flee. It might enable the use cases like that. And there are, use cases like that. Edward Snowden, used Bitcoin. But it also, there are all kinds of things that governments, might have an interest in stopping that you might think should be stopped. Things like money laundering, things like terrorist financing, drug dealing, notoriously Bitcoin is sometimes used for, tax evasion. So, it's interesting. It's really interesting. And of course, there's all, if it manages to do what Bitcoiners say it will do and actually replace fiat currency, we'll see about that. There's all kinds of things that a central bank is able to do to help, adjust the economy that wouldn't be possible with Bitcoin replacing it. So it's interesting. It's really interesting to think about.
So you got interested in it, writing with Financial Post. Now you're with a digital magazine, effectively, are you not? A digital media. Why are you still writing about it?
So I saw an opportunity. 2021 is, I talked a bit about 2017 and all the interesting, wild things that were happening back then in cryptocurrency. 2021 feels like that, but times a million. So you're now starting to see banks actually, holding Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in custody and for their clients and letting them trade it in their brokerage accounts. You have Bitcoin ETFs. You can put Bitcoin in your RSP now. You can
Tesla, put Bitcoins in your RSPs?
Indirectly, yes, you can invest in a Bitcoin ETF and you can put that in your RSP or in your TFSA and gain exposure to that. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, public companies like Tesla, it's an S&P 500 company. It's got $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin on its balance sheet. So we all, anybody who's investing in an index of stocks with exposure to that has some exposure to Bitcoin in their portfolio. It's just become integrated in the mainstream financial system in so many more ways than it was in 2017, and it's getting even more interesting than it was before.
We're chatting tonight about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. We're going to take a break and come back after just a couple of minutes of messages. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. I'm really quite interested in what this, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and all this are all about. And so we reached out to Clare Brownell, who is a reporter with a online newspaper called The Logic, and she's an associate editor with Maclean's, and she's a reporter and feature writer with the Financial Post. And she knows what she's talking about in regards to cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin has gone nutso from a valuation standpoint. Is it a bubble? Is it justified? What's going on?
Another interesting question. I'd say I can predict, I don't want to predict the future, but I think there will almost certainly be a price correction with Bitcoin from the run up that we've seen this year. That's just, you've seen it over and over in its history. It's notoriously volatile. It goes up wildly and then it comes back down wildly. But something else that, Bitcoiners will point out to you is that the chart, over time is sharply going up in value. That I think it's at about $60,000 US right now, 55,000, 60,000. And that's, when I first started covering it in 2016, it was about $500. So you've made some money, definitely, if you've held on to your Bitcoin for that amount of time.
So should we be buying or should we be worried?
Well, I mean, I don't want to give anyone investment advice in terms of whether they should buy it or not. I think that people should think if they're interested in buying it, it's really like any other, it is a speculative tech investment. It's like investing in a tech, any tech startup, any technology that you don't really know. The promises are big, right, in terms of what it might be able to do. We talked a little bit earlier about, sort of like the really big wild scenario of it actually replacing all of, the currencies currently issued by central banks and being used for payments in a mainstream way. That would be, like the big, huge, massive potential for it to have. The jury's still out on whether it's going to be able to accomplish that. If you believe that it has that kind of upside, then Bitcoin at $55,000 US is looking pretty cheap. But there are competitors out there, lots of other competing cryptocurrencies that might overtake it. Governments might issue stricter regulations against it. All kinds of things might happen that could make that value crash down.
I read a recent article that you wrote, and it talked about a gentleman by the name of Gerald Cotton who died. And you say investors lost a combined 169 million people that couldn't be recovered because the whole issue was unregulated. Is there a problem with lack of regulation in this whole cryptocurrency area? Is that an issue that we've got to be concerned about?
Well, what's interesting is that regulators are really struggling with how they're going to regulate it, because by design, it is difficult to regulate. There's no, Bitcoin isn't a company. There's no, CEO you can go after, or, shareholders or board. It's software, right? It's software that is, run on people's computers around the world. And it's hard, some might say impossible, for governments to stop. What they can regulate are the intermediaries. So, most of us these days get paid in Canadian dollars, not Bitcoin. So if we want to buy some Bitcoin, we have to go to an exchange to convert our dollars, into cryptocurrency. And those are businesses, right? Those are businesses that are performing a bank-like function, of exchanging that money, often doing other bank-like things like, holding it in custody for people. And that's the type of thing that, there's a big effort right now among securities regulators in Canada to try and say, okay, these exchanges that are doing a lot of these things that a bank would do should be, following some of the same rules and restrictions that banks have to follow. And they're trying to get them registered as securities dealers, and to be a little bit more strictly governed. So it's an interesting process. I'm trying to go about doing that.
You also wrote another article titled "Canada is a Haven for Crypto Businesses and White Collar Crime." So why Canada? Is it because of lax regulation?
Yeah, so one thing that is definitely, pretty much nobody disputes this, is that Canada is, if you are going to conduct a fraud, of any type, cryptocurrency, other type of white collar crime, Canada is a good place to do it. We just have sort of notoriously, we don't have a lot of resources invested in white collar crime. Our securities regulation is very fragmented, where we have a different one for all of the provinces. So, there are lots of, I don't want to say here, there are lots of, I think, legitimate businesses out there that are trying to play by the rules and aren't out there to scam anyone. But if you do, if you are out to scam someone and that's what you want to do, Canada's not a bad place to do it. It's, most experts agree. So that's something that, I think the regulators are taking a hard look at and trying to make it so that we don't have another one of those giant collapses like we did with Quadriga, where people are losing hundreds of millions of dollars, because that's how much some of these exchanges hold sometimes.
Is this going to change the way that people were looking for reserve currencies in the U.S. dollars, or in bad economic times they were investing in gold and silver? Is cryptocurrency, is Bitcoin going to become that sort of reserve currency, that thing that people want to invest in as a hedge against deflationary or inflationary environments? Or is it just another tech thing to invest in and hope it goes through the roof?
Yeah, it's definitely something, people who are hardcore Bitcoiners, they worry a lot about inflation, and that's, how they see Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation. Was when, only 21 million Bitcoins will ever be created. It's not like with the Canadian dollar, where you can just, have quantitative easing and have the central bank, put out more and more. It's, by definition, there's going to be 21 million Bitcoins, and that's how many there's going to be. And so there are people who like that property about it, see that as a sort of hedge, or apocalypse insurance, some people call it. Some people call the
apocalypse
collapse and
insurance. That's fascinating. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So if you get into a real apocalypse scenario, where the governments collapse, where there's a world war, some other government invades Canada and just says we're wiping out the Canadian dollar. That's if you have Bitcoin, if you know your private key in your own head and nobody else knows it, then nobody else can take it from you, right? You've got it, it's safe. Now the question is it going to be worth anything? Is anybody going to take it from you and exchange it for goods and services? But yeah, that's one quality that people for sure see and like about Bitcoin.
You write for a electronic digital media company. What's the future of digital media versus print media?
I'll tell you that, yeah, there are a few things that I really like about writing for a new digital media startup that is based in subscriptions only. I like that it allows us to they really care about investing that money that they earn back in the journalism, having us focus on doing in-depth work, and it really aligns the incentives. I think that we're out there wanting to write things that our subscribers are interested in reading, as opposed to just writing anything that's going to attract eyeballs so that advertisers will give us more money because as many people as possible are reading the site. It allows us to do things that are a little bit more in depth, that are really focused on what our readers want. And that hopefully has some revenue that's a little bit more stable than what we've been seeing with declining print advertising dollars and broadcast advertising dollars over the amount of time I've been working in this business. So I like that about it for sure.
Your tagline says in-depth reporting on the innovation economy. So is Logic only about the innovation economy, nothing else?
We like to look at it as we're about the future of the economy in Canada in general, the future of business and just the future of where our country is going. So one of our thesis is that the innovation economy is really important to that. You see that with, Shopify being the most valuable company in the country as just one example. We're just looking at the ways that technology is changing society and the economy, but it's really about those bigger issues in general of just what is the future of Canada.
Is this a Canadian digital media company?
Yeah, it's a Canadian independent digital media company. Yeah, that's right.
And if people want to read your blogs or your articles and or read Logic's, how do they get access to it?
You can go to www.thelogic.co/subscribe. You can sign up for a subscription, and that's how you can read our stuff.
What is your prediction for Bitcoin in a couple of years? Is it going to be everywhere, or everyone going to be invested and knowledgeable about it? Or is it going to go the way of the dodo bird?
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's really hard to say. One thing that I think that it's proven itself to not be a fad, right? It's been around for, well over a decade at this point. You've got all these, major financial players getting involved now. I don't see it, I think you could plausibly make an argument that this is like the tulip fad, back when it was first coming out, or even a few years ago. I think at this point, it's too integrated into the system for it to just be, a total fad and a flop in that way. One thing that Bitcoin can only process 7 transactions per second, I think, is one thing that's really, so as a payment method, it is not very widely used at all. But yeah, in terms of, an investment as apocalypse insurance, like I was talking about, I think, those use cases may very well stick around.
We've been chatting tonight with Clare Brownell, who is a reporter with The Logic, which is a digital media company here in Canada. Their website is thelogic.co. She's been telling us about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Clare, thank you so much for educating us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.